Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone, and you're welcome to Podium International TV. Today we are on Matters Arising, and my name is Titilola Aboyadeku. With me in the studio, we have Mr. Kayode M. Mola, and we also have a guest. Our guest is a well-known person, is a fantastic talk show host, live TV talk show host, and amongst a lot of other things. Today we want to talk about referendum. We need to define what a referendum is, how people can get referendum, how people can get their say, their wish, and how to get through to the government. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Gbola Oba to the show. Hello, Mr. Gbola.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of being on your show virtually. Thank you for the opportunity of also being found eligible to engage with your issue today.
Thank you. And Mr. K, please say hello to your guests, to your viewers.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our program today. So we'll be looking at referendum and how citizens can either demand or request for one, and how is it even ever conducted. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Gbola, can you please help us to unravel a lot of things going on with the Yoruba people and the various groups talking about referendum and other people advising that it's not something that is possible in the country called Nigeria. Can you shed a bit of light on that for us?
The Yoruba people, to define what's happening with Yoruba people, I want to believe that you mean the recent assertiveness of the Yoruba people or agitation, a word that many people don't like, agitation for independence or self-governance by the Yoruba people. Am I right by
Absolutely.
thinking that is what? Okay, fantastic. And within the context of that, you also want me to do a bit of enlightenment of how the instrumentality of a referendum or plebiscite could be actuated, given the fact that the Nigerian constitution ostensibly does not have a provision for classical referendum, except when a local government, a new local government area is to be created. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. What is a referendum? Will be the first question.
Mm-hmm.
A referendum is a political instrument that allows the eligible electors in a constituency to electorally decide on a policy issue or a particular objective that they want the government to implement. So the best society to use, or the best polity to use for an example of referenda, that where referenda are often conducted is the state of California. The state of California conducts referendums or referenda on just about anything. And that is why at about any time that there's going to be a main election in California, there's always a referendum or referenda issues built into their conventional elections. They just about everything. They just recently did one now on how to allow some forms of houses to get remodifications and whatever. They do so. However, it's not peculiar to a subnational like California, because in the state of California, in the case of California, is more of a subnational in the United States of America. Recently, a referendum was conducted in Chile, where Chile did not have a clear-cut referendum provision in its constitution, but as a result of the agitation on the streets of Chile, a constitutional, a particular or a peculiar situation was created where ultimately a constitutional assembly was set up, and ultimately when the Constituent Assembly ultimately gave its report, a referendum was conducted to validate the recommendations and that finally led to a 35-year-old student leader. Imagine not too long ago, just about 2 months ago, as the new leader of Chile. So I'm sitting here now thinking referendum could come about as a result of a definite provision of the instrumentality, that political instrumentality, the Constitution, or as a result of circumstances leading to even transcribing a conventional election into a de facto referendum. When we go further, I will explain how a conventional election, an election for, an election dedicated to elect any of a number of candidates, can also be used as a de facto referendum. When we get to it, I'll explain that better.
You are muted, Coach Tak.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Bolauba. Mr. Kademola, what's your take on this?
Yeah, Mr. Bolauba has expounded on referendum, and even Chile, the example he used, and then he used California. Another country that uses referendum a lot is Swiss. So just about anything, they go out to have referendums. So referendum could be in a local council. So for instance, there are many local governments in Nigeria that they say, oh, these local governments are bankrupt. They can't even exist. They can't bear to pay salaries. Now, a local government can decide to have a referendum and say, we no longer want to be alone. We want to join with another local government. So referendums doesn't have to always be national. It could be within local governments. It could be within a state. So 2 states could have referendums and say, we want to join together and become one. Or within a state, some constituents within a state could say, we want to have our own state. So referendum it's a form of legitimacy when you have difficult questions. And that is why Yoruba people are saying, there are too many voices now claiming we are the right voice. We are the ones speaking for the Yoruba people. We are the ones speaking. How do you know what the Yoruba people want? How can you come out and say you're speaking for the Yoruba people when you don't know? the governor of Ondo State came out at one time and said, oh, where did we decide? Where did we discuss? Ondo State would not be a part of Yoruba nation. The last time I checked, about 98% of Ondo State people are Yoruba, irrespective of what dialect they speak or what tribe they belong. So referendum is just an opportunity to give legitimacy to the voice and yearnings of the people. So when a lot of people say, oh, referendum is not in the election, it's not in the constitution, like Mr. Bola Oba said, some elections can even be turned into a referendum. And when the people are dissatisfied with the government and say, you are not doing this, they can then make their voices and opinions heard. In the case of Nigeria, I don't know how you bring issues to the government, but issues are brought on, I know the government or the government know me. No, in civil society, you have, if you have, like in the UK, how they raise issues, you could raise issues to parliament. You could bring an issue, the government have a dedicated site where you can start a campaign. Once your campaign can get to a certain number, say 5,000, then they ask a few people to sit down and look at those issues. It's not all the issues. If the campaign can get up to 100,000, then it becomes an issue to be debated in parliament. In Nigeria, we've not developed those modalities. So even when you get 1 million signatures to say the Yoruba people want a referendum, we are now sending it to the National Assembly to put it in. They don't necessarily need to put it into law. They can then propose it on the floor and debate it to say, let the Yoruba people go and have a referendum to decide the state of their union with Nigeria. So that is another way you could look at it. So when people say referendum has to be in the constitution, the thing is, it could either be or not be. But whether it is there or not there does not mean the electorate or the people are denied that right. And sometimes referendum could, you could lower the age. Like in the case of Scotland, I think they've lowered it to 16, where they've got 16 years being able to vote. In the case of Wales, you've got 14 years being able to vote. So not in all elections, but in some elections. So those things, you decide it in a referendum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kayode Amola. Now, Mr. Bola Oba mentioned something earlier on. He said there's a way to have a de facto referendum. I wonder what he meant by that. But before we go into that, we're saying elections, a lot of Yoruba's groups, the self-determination groups, are saying, oh, there's not going to be an election. I wonder how they intend to do that, because we're running so close to the election period, and the government are obviously not listening to what the people want. So I wonder if the instrument to be used can be defined by Mr. Bola Oba by what he meant by de facto referendum. Thank you, sir.
I must start by saying that we have a situation where you have 1,000 flowers blooming on the course of Yoruba self-governance or self-government or Yoruba
self-determination.
Or self-determination. Because you have 1,000 ideological flowers blooming, one has to be very, very concise. The ones that I, Bola Oba, am talking to. Those who believe in using violence, they are not the kind of people I want to ruminate with intellectually. So let's leave those ones aside. because those who are predisposed to wanting to use violence, to be honest with you, I am not. For those who are frustrated that there is no ostensible provision for referendum in the Nigerian constitution, especially on a national issue, beyond the element of referendum, just when you want to create local government, new local government area. I want to say, I've got good news for you. And the good news, before I get to the good news, let me also say something now to agitators of Yoruba self-determination who may not know that the greatest disadvantage, the greatest baggage they carry now is the baggage of legitimacy. Akeredolu could arrogantly and condescendingly talk to anybody agitating for Yoruba self-determination by saying who elected them, which forum did the Yorubas agree. You know why he could say that? Because for whatever it is worth, he believes that he has a mandate, and the mandate was what propelled him to emerge as the governor of a constituent body of a sub-region in Nigeria known as Southwestern region. Now, let's just say, for example, who gave Professor Baba Akintoye, who gave him any mandate to be the spokesperson for Yoruba? It's just that as a Yoruba person who knows the potentials of his people, he must have been so disturbed that he decided, out of having led a fulfilled life and ordinarily should be in retirement, he decided to sacrifice his own peace and be on the line to agitate for the liberation of his people. But we must fundamentally address ourselves to the fact that there is no mandate upon which is empathetic, genuine agitations are based.
I beg to differ. There is a mandate from the Yoruba people. He was unanimous. Yes, there's a mandate by the Yoruba people from different organizations.
Am I an equal man?
Sorry?
Am I an equal man?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think what Coach Clark is trying to say, when you talk of mandate, now talk of elections, Yoruba people have formed themselves into different organizations at different times. And at one time, I think in 2018, the youth, seeing that we cannot continue in this way, a lot of our people are thrown into exile, not because they want it, but because the economic situation in Nigeria is never going to get better. They came together, joined together and say, Baba Akintoye, we want you to come out as one of the elders who has a voice to speak on our behalf. So that in itself, it's a mandate that was given to him.
The person, Akeredolu, who arrogantly and condescendingly asked Baba Akintoye and the agitators of Yoruba self-determination, who asked them who gave them mandate. Would you agree with me that Akeredolu defeated somebody at the elections through which he emerged as governor, and that person also has a number of groups supporting him? You know what a mandate is? A mandate is when you put an issue to test, and a preponderant majority of those who directly either voted for it or indirectly voted for it instructs or indicates that, you know, we believe that what this person is doing has legitimacy.
Yeah,
So
that's when it comes to superiority of argument.
No, I'm basically telling you that the best form of mandate in a liberal democracy is a mandate that is tied to the indications by a popular majority of electors on an issue.
And that is why we are saying there are so many voices in Yoruba now who are claiming to have that mandate. Now we are saying, give us a referendum to decide this once and for all.
If you can listen, you will help so many people who have sacrificed too much to this and they are going nowhere fast. Yeah. And I think one of the major problems I have with people in this so-called Yoruba agitation cause is that you can hear yourselves, but you don't want to hear others.
Exactly.
I am a Yoruba man. I would rather prefer a Yoruba enclave where I know that the best of potentials that the Yorubas have within and without Nigeria can be articulated for the sustainable progress of that area. But we are in a situation now where, as we speak, the Nigerian constitution does not have the provision for referendum on national issues. But what can we do to register our predisposition, our commitment to wanting a reform, either in the Nigerian constitution or literal self-government? And the only thing I see at this juncture is to turn their own election, turn it into a de facto referendum for them. And the election is soon to be held in Ekiti. An election will soon be held in Ekiti. The major parties are already producing their own candidates for the election. The PDP has nominated a candidate. The APC has nominated a candidate. If I was a strategist advising Baba Akintoye, I would tell Baba, you know what we could do with this election, which will cost us nothing more than a popular lingo. Don't bother to look for a political party. Don't bother to produce any candidate to contest against the candidate of either the APC or the PDP. But you know what? Let's find a strategy to let an average Ekiti elector hear this word. If you could just make that popular amongst the electors on those gubernatorial elections, a majority of them being empathetic with the circumstance of Igbo, would you think that on that election day, some people would not go into those booths and deliberately waste their own ballot? There would be some who would deliberately go into those booths and instead of printing one column, may print two or more. So that, and you know what? The Nigerian electoral law states that after voting, all votes cast in a particular booth must be counted. Imagine at the end of the ballot, at the end of the balloting day, and when votes are counted, say 200 people went into the booths, and ultimately, when votes were counted, 100 votes wasted, 100 ballot papers wasted because people printed two or more. Somebody won 50, somebody won 25, somebody won 23, somebody won 2. Would you, given the campaign that had earlier been initiated, would you not see that 100 as an indication that majority of those who voted in that booth, would you not see it as an indication that they are predisposed to anything that we allow the government of Nigeria to find a way of talking either to Igbo or people who can speak on behalf of Igbo? That is a form of legitimacy. That in itself is de facto
referendum.
Or referendum. But we are in a situation now where I hear some people saying, war. I don't see Chief Obafemi Awolowo told Ojukwu before the Nigerian Civil War. You know what? I feel as much frustrated with Nigeria as you do. But the fact is that as at that time, he made Ojukwu realize that in virtually all the military barracks in the southwest of Nigeria, majority of the soldiers there were Hausas, were from the north. And he could not risk the lives of his people by letting those who were not armed, these people who were not likely armed, to be facing those who were armed. So sometimes you will stoop to conquer. The only instrument that will, one, accord the Yoruba cause legitimacy at this juncture, that will rattle the establishment to know that, you know what, it does see that the majority of these people quite subscribe to the idea of self-government. Even if we don't want to give them self-government in totality, maybe we should be looking at constitutional reform to accommodate some of the agitation. Would be the machination or the strategizing that will allow majority of Yorubas who can legitimately vote, who are perceived and seen by the Nigerian Constitution to be mature enough to express what they want, to say, you know what, this is Igbo cause. We are interested in it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Golaba. So what you're saying, if I'm not mistaken, is, if I hear you correctly, is don't shun election, participate in the electoral activities, but nullify the votes.
Make sure that you use
your vote to express your state of mind.
Fantastic. And let me also build on that succinct point that you have made. And let me build on it by saying that the constitutional instrumentality that the Nigerian state seasonally or periodically articulates to further entrench the injustice that the Yorubas are shouting against now is the periodic elections that they will claim, after all, you elect your leaders. And an average Yoruba person is feeling, these are not our leaders. You force us through a charade that you put up every 4 years to have to legitimize them, even when in a state like Lagos, and I want to shock you, in a state like Lagos where there are more than 20 million residents, the people who elect at any point in time, the people who elect the governor of Lagos are less than 1 million people. Is that not preposterous? As we speak, Lagos is the most populous state in Nigeria.
And even in Africa.
At no time as the governor of Lagos State since 1999 emerged with more than 600 200,000 direct votes for him. Not that. In a population of 12. And you see, imagine now that in Ekiti, where you averagely have not more than, say, 150 to 200,000 people supposedly electing the governor of Ekiti. Imagine in the coming election, as a result of a deliberate campaign to encourage people, ẹ jáde, ẹ lọ dìbò, ẹ dàbò wọn, ẹ bàbò wọn jẹ́, kẹjẹ kó mọ̀ pé Igboho lọ̀gá. And suddenly in that election, you have about 1 million votes cast, and out of that million, more than 500,000, indicating through a wasted ballot that they subscribed to that campaign. And the ultimate person who emerged as governor of Ekiti State suddenly came up with nothing more than 250, the usual 200 to 250,000 votes. Even when that person emerges as the governor of Ekiti State, I want to say with a degree of conceit, intellectual conceit, that person will be tilting more in the direction of giving leeway to those who subscribe to the Igboho cause, because he knows that his electoral life or his political life could be jaundiced if he does not accommodate them enough. And that would be a signal to people in Abuja who live on the conceit that after all you elect your leaders yourself. So it's not going to cost Yoruba Nation agitators. It's not going to cost them any money to register a political party. It's not going to cost them any money to campaign for anybody as governorship candidate in Ekiti State or for anything. It is just to let our people know that here on their own, they are presenting an own goal opportunity. And we want to see them frustrated enough by using their own game against them or playing their own game against them. Ẹ jáde, ẹ̀yin èèyàn wa, ẹ jáde, ẹ lọ dìbò, ṣùgbọ́n ẹ bàbò wọn jẹ́ kó gbà pé Igboho lọ̀gá.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry. You were saying something. Finish your point, please.
No, you go ahead. The points remain.
So, thank you very much, Mr. Bola. I'll call on Mr. Kayode Mola now, because for me, it sounds like a good idea. However, won't that give us another 4-year journey? Because they will still emerge. We will still have the new government. So is that the only way that the Yorubas can express their feelings or can get what they want? Because self-determination, the Yoruba says, they're saying they want out of Nigeria. But by coming out to vote again, will that not, Mr. K, I give that to you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach Tak. And what Mr. Bola Oba is saying, I will not throw it away, because it's a good strategy. And that's trying to look for a non-violent means of making a statement. Kazakhstan, the people were frustrated because of the increase in electricity prices, that they had to come out. And when they came out en masse, they were able to bring down the government. Now, even if they didn't bring down the government, because the government imported Marines from Russia and the people were bounced down. Correction. They didn't bring down the government. Okay. But they were able to hold the government to ransom. The same thing happened. Protested, and the government was startled. In fact, the government was shaken. But unfortunately, because they live in a sub-region where there is a hegemon, a military hegemon. Russia sphere of influence. Russia sent in, the equivalent of Russian Marines, and the people were marked down. But you know what? The president survived, but he changed some officers of state, and indeed he recalibrated the power equations in the state to favor himself. But having said that, I just wanted to put in the fact that they couldn't change government. Yeah, the same thing happened in Belarus when they had a protest, and the government too was shaking. Russia had to come in, and the government had a more firepower. Now, in the case of Nigeria, and it has to do with strategy, how to force this referendum. Is like what Coach Stark is saying. If we go there, we vote. Definitely, there will be at least one sympathetic vote for the government. We cannot guarantee that maybe half of the ballots would be destroyed via a Babowonje, spoil their vote for 10 candidates so that they can count who you voted for. So even if one person gets one vote out of 1 million votes, 990 something thousand is bad, and one person gets a vote, he emerges. So although we win a statement, and I get your point that it's going to be a very big statement. Now, if I were to propose that, I would say it's not going to be an ongoing event. Because what we're saying is, let's have an instrument where we get a referendum before the general elections. Let the referendum stay. Let's go and look for that legitimacy, that mandate, because the instrumentality of how Nigeria came to be from 1900 to the amalgamation in 1914, to the conference in 1957, to the election, to the Decree 24 that became the 1999 Constitution. Nigeria has been precipitated on a false footing. None of these we are legit. None of the people of Nigeria were ever asked what they wanted. None of the people of Nigeria were ever given that opportunity. So if we say, okay, let's go out again and engage in this voting exercise, which we can turn into a de facto referendum, that's also giving our slave masters another set of 4 years to enslave us.
Let me quickly correct a mistake that I see the two of you making. The mistake is that you have Ekiti governorship election coming in a matter of weeks or months. After that, you have the Osun governorship election coming in a matter of weeks and months. Then you have the general elections in 2023, starting with the presidential elections at the end of February 2023. So where does the 4-year issue comes in now? Because if you make the statement well enough in Ekiti, if you do rehearsal with this de facto referendum in Ekiti, you also replicate it in Osun, and you use Ekiti and Osun to mobilize the Yoruba people for what should be done at the general elections.
In 2023.
Whoever imagines the president of Nigeria, be that person another cocky, arrogant, and conceited Fulani person like President Muhammadu Buhari, which unfortunately has built that legacy. Be that person as conceited as he, that person will at least know that to work with the Yoruba people in the Nigeria that it will be presidentially over, it would have to at least countenance the idea of a constitutional reform or the idea of allowing the Yoruba to have the instrumentation of a referendum, which is not something that is beyond the power of a president who is determined to send an executive bill to the National Assembly for the provision of referendum to be integrated into the Nigerian Constitution. If he or she, the president, believes it, we are in the quagmire that we are in now, because they arrogantly tell us that there is no provision for that in the Constitution. You know what? The only provision is that you can work with your elected members elected members of the legislatures, the state and federal. So which we do prefer? going about it without causing much harm to your people, and then getting legitimacy for organizations such as Ilana Odua, YSN, Directorate, and the plethora of organizations that people are, almost 1,000 now at the last count. And people condescendingly say you don't have legitimacy, because those wasted votes will speak to the fact that, oh, these people that we thought are noisemakers are not only noisemakers, they indeed have the hearts of many Yoruba people.
Okay.
Like again, I agree with your argument, and it is a superior argument. However, that can be used as an option for just when I say council, or let's say state, pending where we can, if that is to be used as an option based on a 12-month timeline to ensure we get a referendum before the general election.
Thank you very much. You cannot get a referendum for the general election. I don't live in delusion, my brother. And I will not sit, I will not sit in a strategy session. Let's turn this into a strategy session now. I will not sit in a strategy session and promise people what I know will never happen. No Nigerian politician, not even the Yorubas, no Nigerian politician as of today, except people like ourselves who are not mainstream, come and chop politicians. No Nigerian politician, including the Yorubas, will subscribe to a referendum before the general elections in 2023. My brother, somebody like yourself, myself, and other concerned Nigerians or Yorubas will prefer it, but none of them would. You know what? Because they think they have you in a box. That's number one. They think they have you in a box because they can always legitimize their misgovernance, misrule by the periodic elections that they do. I am now putting it on the table that but having said that, I need to also make a point here. The strategy of turning their elections into de facto referendum does not mean that other strategies that you people use should be forsaken. No. The only strategy that I will not support is the strategy of violence. But some of the things you do, the international campaigns you do, in the not only in the diaspora, but to governments in countries where you people have residents, or where you people have residencies. Oh, fantastic. I won't say you shouldn't continue that. In fact, you should let the governments know from the moment you have done Ekiti and you see good results, you know Osun will happen. You should let the governments know that, you know what, the Nigerian government that has refused to allow us the provision of referendum in the Nigerian constitution, we are now playing their games on their own terms, and our people are legitimizing our position. Osun, you let them see. Oh, you know what? Let's even look at what will happen at the general elections in 2023. And in 2023, we want to say with a degree of confidence, having noticed what the traction you have gained between Osun, between Ekiti to Osun, and say in 2023, we are very confident that minimum of 25 or minimum of 30% of our people, far more than those who will supposedly emerge as the winners in those elections, our people will say they want self-government or
determination
or self-determination, because those wasted votes are as a result of a deliberate campaign that we have launched. And you know what? The easiest way to seize the moment now, as they'll say, Carpe Diem, seize the day. The easiest way is, and Igboho will be happy for this. You are not using his name to promote somebody's political ambition. You are not using his name to register a political party with which you will make money. You are using his name to let Yorubas speak that the condition they have put Igboho, the Yorubas are hungry. I never supported Igboho before. I must tell you people who are listening, I used to think it was just, it was just a thuggish character. It was the attack against his house that July morning that made me feel, you know what, if they could do it to that guy, they could do it to me. And now I am a sympathizer of Igbo. If you call a vote today, I don't vote in Nigeria. If you call a vote today and there is a deliberate campaign that if you go into the booth, waste the vote, and that vote will be speaking to the fact that I don't like the condition that Igbo is in, I will go on that election day to go and waste my vote with a view to making a statement as an elector that I am not voting to support the chicanery that they call government or election, but I'm voting to register my displeasure with the circumstance they put an innocent man who they could not use the instrumentality of the law to deal with if they believe that he was promoting violence, but they also used uglier and worse violence, not only to invade his house, vandalize his property,
vandalize all his properties, spoil all the cars, and even kill people in the house.
People, innocent people.
So
which security forces does that?
If Bola, who once used to be Igbo, which Igbo is a very opportunistic guy who had led a life of political opportunism all his life. From fighting, he was not a Modakeke person. He was just like a hired mercenary fighting fighting for Modakeke against the Ifes. Because somebody like what's his name? The late what's his name? Arishekola. Because Arishekola was funding it, he was making money from Arishekola. Apart from that, he was a PDP person for years. I will know. So for me, I was not. But the day they attacked his house, he became a hero for Balaba. And for now, as a this doctor, for me, he goes a hero. I win. I have never voted since 1999. Never voted. But you know what? If Igbo's name is used to mobilize the populace, that if you go into that booth, just waste that ballot by pressing 2 or more columns, so that at the end of the day, I will wait at that booth. At the end of the day, I want them to count how many votes, like mine, was wasted. And once they count it, I see it's the majority. If they say it's the majority in my booth, I will be shouting, up Igbo, release Igbo, because people in that booth must have legitimized the campaign for the respect for rule of law on the issue of Igbo. I'm not one of, many of these people are supporting him because maybe for some other reasons. I never liked this guy, but now where I am, he's a hero. So how can you mobilize somebody like Balaba, who is not predisposed to violence, who is not predisposed to doing Yoruba Nation the way you people are doing it, as articulate and coherently as you are doing it, and to let people who may be looking at you condescendingly as they are noise makers, to let them know that a certain percentage of our people, like Balaba, do empathize with these people. So I don't know.
And that is what we want. So we will keep our strategies intact within us, and we will utilize every weapon that is available
to you.
Like
I told you, the one that I can passionately, enthusiastically, I can even use my money to support such a campaign. Just to make that statement, I will use my own money to support that. I will use my resources to support that. I will let the Nigerian government at all strata of government in Nigeria, local government, state and federal, realize that a sizable percentage of Yoruba people
are saying no more to the fraudulent Nigeria.
No more fraudulent Nigeria. And you know what? We are not doing it the way you can mislabel us. we are using the instrumentality of a conceited and deceitful machinery that you have set in place to send a statement to you that this is what we desire. I don't know what I can say beyond that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gwelaba and Mr. Keyemola. We're running out of time, as you might be aware, but I want to correct a few things, Mr. Gwelaba. When you said, or maybe correct a few impressions, when you said, oh, violence, you mentioned violence about 3 or 4 times. When you see Yoruba self-determination groups, when you see anybody talking about violence out of them, they're not really part of this movement.
Groups.
They're not really part of this journey. They're outsiders trying to paint the journey wrong, trying to paint the movement in a negative light, especially to people like you who are watching from afar, who are not sure of the type of people they are. We have a lot of intellectuals in there.
If I could add, Coach Tak, a lot of people do not know that self-determination is a legal word.
Yes.
And in the articles of the United Nations, Article 1, it was the first thing that the United Nations mentions.
We have a right to self-determination.
People have the right to self-determination. A lot of people.
Let me just quickly finish. Let me just quickly finish my point.
Let me quickly put this in before you guys go. My brother, you don't have to redefine what has been established by a court. A court of competent jurisdiction in Ibadan or State pronounced when a strategic lawyer did the right thing by going to court to say, when you say self-determination is a phraseology that speaks to illegality or to violence or that is inconsistent with Nigerian constitution, I want to let you know that indeed the Nigerian constitution countenances it. And the court ruled that yes, the Nigerian constitution vicariously accommodates self-determination, and yet the Attorney General of the Federation the Attorney General of Oyo State has neither appealed nor the Attorney General of the Federation. It means that
they have no
self-determination is a part of our law. So why not build upon that and use the instrumentation we are using now? I quite understand the point. You people are my friends, and I know you people are not predisposed to violence. But you will also agree with me that there are some elements within the so-called Yoruba agitation movement who are mouthing violence. And let's be very honest with ourselves. One of the reasons why I did not like Igboho up until the day that violence was visited upon him was that he was also walking the borderline. And for a man to me that I believe had always profited from being a merchant of violence, from Modakeke to his days supporting PDP characters in the southwest of Nigeria, especially Oyo State, my sister, my brother, I was not enamored about his personage until violence was visited upon him. And my support to get Igboho liberated today, to get Igboho into freedom, is not because I like his person, but because fundamentally, the harm that was done him could be done to me by the Nigerian state if I don't rise up now and fight for his freedom. That is it. But Igboho for me too, was on the borderline of violence and the non-violence that people like Baba, Professor, did I ever say violence that mentioned the name of Baba, Professor Akintoye? Did I ever mention violence that mentioned the name of Titilola Aboyadeko or my brother here? But when I say violence, some people, even blocking behind you people, are still mouthing violence.
Thank you very much. But let me complete my point. Maybe you will see the answer in what you're trying to say here. I personally, as an individual, was never part of this self-determination movement. My friend has been trying to get me involved for 2 years, and I wasn't even sure of what it was and what they were doing really, because of what I was looking at from afar. But the day this guy was violated, like you also said, on the 1st of July 2021, no, I swore to go for these people. Like, no, you can't do that. We will do everything humanly possible, legally possible, to make sure we get what we're looking for. However, I am only in this journey for one reason and one reason. Professor Banji Akintoye, he has always said, we are going to leave Nigeria without firing a single bullet.
I totally agree with you. And
that's what I subscribe to.
I must say that Baba Akintoye has consistently,
yes,
and that is why
without firing a single bullet. That's what I subscribe to.
And that is why I even
let me say this. Let me say this to add to what you know. This self-determination has been on for several years, and even in the near years, since 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's about like 5 years that people have been working behind the scenes, trying to get the intelligentsia, trying to get the intellectuals to see reasons. Majority of the people who are intellectuals, now the violence meted out on Igboho, it is because it became public. That is why people are now identifying with it. This violence has started on the Yoruba people.
Since the opportunity of the visceral anger people are now having against the Nigerian government because of the violence visited upon Igboho.
And that is why I say we would look at every strategy.
Fantastic.
You will look at every, because nothing will be left unturned. It is when Igboho came into the scene in 2021. Igboho was there. He was, like you said, he was on the borderline. Should I go or should I not go? Igboho came out in 2020 and not many people supported him. And in between 2020 and 2021, quite a lot of people were killed in his own hometown.
Okay, Mr. K, please, we're rounding up. I need to make this, I need to also make this point. I need to make this case for Igboho. Igboho, it doesn't matter his history. Whatever he has done in the day of politics, we all have history. People have history. But on this struggle, I don't agree that it was on the borderline of violence. I will tell you why. Self-defense is a right. You have a right to defend your life, property, your life and property. So if you violate me, I will defend myself. You cannot come into my land and kill my people, and you expect me not to rise up to you. That's not violence. I'm defending myself.
Lady Adeko, if that is what you want to, if that is what you want to intellectually believe about the personage of Igboho, I respect it. Because
I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about his past. I don't know him. I didn't know much about him.
And some of us who are news savvy and who have been following the news for decades and who tend to put people in the boxes from which they emanate, as even today, if they release Igboho today and it gets back to freedom, I will support the agitation and the methodology being used by Professor Banji Akintoye.
So would I.
Non-violence at the expense of attack one border. I can defend myself, but when I'm defending myself,
that is another
misinformation.
That is another. Igboho never attacked.
That's another misinformation.
Igboho never went to the border.
Too many misinformation that you people who are close to him should counsel him that when you conduct yourself in some manner, some elements who are mischievous
would capitalize on it.
If you people cannot counsel him on that, then you are not his good friends. It's been a lovely time spending time with you guys.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gwalaba.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you for
Bolauba.
honoring our invitation. And thank you everyone for staying with us today. It's another engaging time, spending time with you guys and discussing the referendum. So from me, Titilola Abayadeko, also known as Coach TAC, and Mr. Kade Mola, with our guest, Mr. Bolauba, we say thank you very much